We're gonna shift now to our second session. Y'all are welcome to stay on and hear about our online presence. I think Catherine Harvey joined our call. She'll be leading our second session this afternoon on how to improve your online presence, especially during this time. There's lots of tools that she's going to share with you today to really get your business out front and make sure that you're getting the online exposure that you need. Catherine is the founder of New South Collective. She's a consulting, marketing, and public relations agency that she serves clients not only in Spartanburg and South Carolina, but it says beyond. So you've got clients all across the area. So Catherine, thank you for being here today and spending some time with a lot of our small business owners as we celebrate Small Business Week. And you're going to give our owners some tips on how to navigate the internet and make their presence known to their targeted audience. And so I will yield the rest of the time to you. Again, we'll have questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, but we'll also spend some time at the end of the session for any direct questions that they may have. So great to see you again, and thanks for being with us, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, and thanks to Jalitha for asking me to be a part of it. And I hate that I've missed the previous sessions, but I'm excited they'll be sharing out links afterwards because this town is full of knowledge. That's one thing I've learned in the last 4 years is that we have a community that are here and ready and willing to provide tips and tricks and counsel and suggestions. Certainly when you are talking about our small businesses, and I know that the Chamber has really been a champion for that. I'm going to actually start a presentation in a minute. I just wanted to take a second to kind of do an overarching, sweeping comment about what an unusual year we have all just experienced, and how that was no different from a marketing and communications field. So everyone on this call pivoted in many different ways, and I'm sure your marketing and communications felt that as well. We here at New South felt it with you. And a lot of that was seeing an influx in our particular clients' needs to build, strengthen, amplify an online presence. And I think that is a general term that can mean a lot of different things. So that's what we're going to talk about today. But also want to keep this as a very open forum. Jalitha, I'll kind of let you field questions along the way, but I don't want to get too far down the road without you raising your hand in a particular segment that we're talking about, because there is no one answer for most of it, and it's always likely unique and specific to the type of organization or business you are. So what I'll give you is a real highlight. That's a lot of the work we've done with our clients in particular, but some overarching information. And then we want to take the rest of this time to really dive deep and do a Q&A. Jalitha, can I share my, okay, great. Let's get this up and running. So New South, sorry folks, we're gonna go back a few slides. New South we actually founded it a little over 3 years ago. I moved back from a good couple of decades in Manhattan and Los Angeles, where I ran marketing and brand strategy for Sesame Street for about a decade, which really gave me an opportunity to both participate in a nonprofit marketing environment, but also a very kind of high octane branding environment and everything in between. And I think a lot of the knowledge base that I was able to gain from that particular role extended into the work that myself and my team are doing here in the community, which has been really exciting. Especially over the past year, we focused our efforts specifically on our nonprofit and impact clients. But as we know, there's a lot of crossover between nonprofits and small businesses. So I think you'll find a lot of reciprocity in the information that we're going to share today. We're a marketing collective, which means we pull in ad hoc talent to support each client's need, whether it's around strategic communications, branding and design, website development, social media, event planning. It really runs the gamut. Our core team here is myself and Brooke Robertson. It's a former team member of the Chamber, which has been wonderful because her interconnectivity within our community already was a real added bonus for building out our opportunities here at New South. And she has just been a rising star through this unusual year and everything that it's taken to serve our clients in the process. A few of our local and national and even global clients include the Spartanburg Area Conservancy, our Science Center, History Museum, the city, the Chamber, the library, the list goes on. And currently we're working with Together SC, which is a nonprofit consortium that supports over 800 members across the state of South Carolina, which has been wonderful, and learning more about the needs of our nonprofits in the current pandemic. And we most recently just started working with the Tribeca Film Festival, who will be offering first festival to open up in-person screening since the pandemic hit. So we're in the midst of supporting them as well. But a lot of our work has supported small businesses as well in Spartanburg. So what have we seen in the past year? All of these things have an arrow, a hypothetical arrow on an upward trajectory, right? You have seen an incredible increase in virtual programming, in social media use, and just overall presence with companies and organizations, with the increase in folks taking their brand online, so building that shop experience, some of them overnight, and unique content creation opportunities, a really big increase in video, podcasts, blogs, just in online content in general has really skyrocketed. And of course, an increase in folks using that e-newsletter platform. So these are all things we're seeing directly with our clients, but certainly trending in the marketing and communications field in general. So more than 500,000 new websites are created globally every day. So you can imagine how much clutter is out there. And I would argue that most folks are found initially through a search, right? Folks are going to search online and find out or research more about your organization or your business before they just drive up to your brick and mortar. And certainly if you don't have that, your online presence is even more critical, but it really becomes that front line of interface with your brand is where folks are going to be able to find you online. And your online presence needs to have the same quality and clarity as your physical space or your physical presence, right? So we got to work with the RJ Rockers team a couple years ago. And one of our tasks was really making sure that every channel where you found them online represented the quality and the experience that you were going to have when you showed up at that brewery. So it's no different whether you're a corporation or a store or you're running a bakery, right? You want folks to be able to have that unique experience when they first find you. The types of sites that we have been asked to build over the past year have really ranged from initiative specific, like building a repository of information around our new bike park here in Spartanburg on behalf of Partners for Active Living. So it could both provide information on safety, what you're going to find when you get there, but also to be used as a promotional tool for the city and for Visit Spartanburg to shout out, and just in general to bring that energy into this new amenity that's being offered in our town. So that kind of unique content that comes with an initiative specific website that's got a lot of energy and action. To kind of revamping the Spartanburg Historical Association, their brand and their website, which we launched prior to the pandemic, but quickly saw how it was a much needed tool for their communication throughout the last year, both in virtual programming, but just in being able to sell tickets directly from their website, or take reservations for their virtual programming, or to be able to update and push out information more readily to a broader audience, to have this as the repository of information. And just a few examples here, flagging that you see kind of very sweeping in large images across the homepage to invite folks in, to give a little bit of a tease of the product that's being offered. We typically advise clients on that when you're building your website. So you've got really a solid visual engagement when you hit that landing page. We also built shop experiences for some of our clients, including the Spartanburg Science Center. So this is a perfect example of needing to be able to kind of sell virtual programming online, or opportunities to fundraise online in a shop experience. We saw a considerable amount of organizations take advantage of that this year. And I'm sure it's no different for some of our small businesses. I know Duffy Bear from Bare Feet really ramped up her shop experience online. We've seen Molly Walker with Blue Moon really take it to the next level in their online offerings, as everybody really started to dance with the rules and regulations of the pandemic to make sure they were still reaching their current audience, but continuing to grow during this most unusual time. Jalitha, do we have any questions here about websites in general before we move on?
We do not have any questions yet.
Okay, great. So part of the website experience is making sure once you build it that you're set up for success. And a lot of that is around your search engine optimization. So it's not the if you build it, they will come model, right? For most of our online marketing, the platforms that you build on have a pay-to-play model, and that's no different. Your search engine optimization certainly amplifies when you allot a budget towards it, but some of the things that you can just do off the bat to start ensuring success is making sure your Google Analytics account is set up, and that helps you track how many people are visiting particular pages, where that traffic's coming from. It goes much deeper than just top level, but it helps you start to understand who your audience is that is engaging and participating on your website. Making sure your meta descriptions are relevant. So when people search you, it's that first section that people see when Google serves up your searches, right? So making sure your keywords and your meta descriptions are accurate and performing well. And then making sure that you are pushing and publishing unique content consistently to help improve your search engine optimization. And that's where your social media strategy can come in. But I think when I first really started consulting in Spartanburg, realizing how many folks weren't receiving their Google Analytics, just a top line report that can be sent to you if it's hooked up properly, is a great place to start, especially if you're a new business getting off the ground. So you can begin to understand the behaviors of your your audience on that particular platform. So social media is the wild, wild west. And I wouldn't deny it otherwise. I think that it is certainly a land of opportunity. And we always encourage our clients to be active on their social media. And we spend a lot of time building a strategy around their planning process. It's time consuming, but if it's intentional, it can really be worth it. So just in this past year, the number of social media users in the United States has increased a significant amount, no doubt, from the swelling of the pandemic. And over 95% of folks are accessing social media from their mobile phones. So that mobile first approach, when you're both thinking about how your site is served up, so how does it work, how does it look on your mobile device, the responsiveness of that site, and then also how is your social media served up? How are folks receiving your messages and where? We think about, and I bet the chamber has this offhand, but if you really think of just about the demographic breakdown of the folks that live in Spartanburg County, from rural to urban, from a younger generation to an older one, the way folks digest and consume information is different, right? Based off their demographic breakdown. And you need to be talking to folks on Facebook in a strategic way, just like you need to be talking to them on Instagram, if that is applicable to your company or organization. And it does require a little bit of planning to think about those message points on multiple platforms, but it's more important that you're reaching them on all of them, right? Because at this point, we're seeing almost like a 50-50 split into definitely the age demographic of using platforms. And then we'll have a whole nother wave of learning as this next generation comes up and informs us how they would like to be reached, which is ever changing. And I somewhat was in jest calling it the wild, wild west, but it's really true because it is ever changing. And you don't have to be ever changing with it. You need to find out what works for you, and just having a moment to plan for particular platforms and receive that information back from Facebook reports and Instagram reports will really help you identify the best way to set goals and to strategically target audiences on social media. Who are you talking to and who is talking about you? So targeted messaging. Who are you talking to? Sorry. Who are you talking to is definitely a key point I want to reiterate. Most companies have multiple audiences, depending on what your product is. And it's okay to have nuanced messaging per audience, especially if you are putting a budget behind it, to more specifically target an audience on social media. That could be an organization that reaches families with young children, educators, and administrators, and you're going to speak to all of those audiences slightly differently. And you want to stay on brand, with your messaging and making sure that your offering or information is clear, but making sure you nuance that slightly. And then who's talking about you? So the number one thing that we reiterate to our clients is it's even more impactful when you have other folks talking about you, shouting out your products or offerings, partnerships that help bridge in some of what you offer to the community, and really amplify your message. It doesn't always need to just be coming from you, the business owner. And that's a really important note, because I think there are this is a very partner-centric community. And so with a little bit of time and planning, bringing folks in to help shout out your messages. A lot of folks are around here interested in supporting small businesses. And it's absolutely acceptable to ask them to, right? Whether you're asking folks to engage with a post, leave a review, provide feedback, any type of intentionality with an ask usually comes up with a positive return that then you can use to enhance your communication plan. So a couple examples of kind of a multi-tier audience that we participate with. One is the Spartanburg Area Conservancy. At any given moment, they're talking to the general public, a conservation community, naturalists, educators, youth. And so we're constantly being thoughtful about the content that we're sharing out on their behalf to make sure that it is on brand and we are speaking to anyone, if not all of those audiences from an intentional standpoint at any given time. Part of that messaging is also utilizing a hashtag. Prior to even coming on board with the Conservancy, they are already using Keep Spartanburg Wild, and that has been a really powerful message for them, and we've utilized that through all of our marketing and communication, and will continue to. And folks are also utilizing that outside of their internal marketing team, which is important. And from a campaign standpoint, it's just lockstep that we're doing it, no different than how you'd see One Spartanburg use their hashtag. Another example of marketing to a multi-tier audience, especially in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, is an organization called Mental Fitness that has to talk to healthcare providers, activists, administrators, youth educators in an app, on a website, through social media, and then through more strategic communication that happens from an in-school administration basis. So working to make sure that their messaging is pushed out to each respective audience on brand, but nuanced clearly from talking to an administrator to talking to a child about mental health. And that is a very strategic messaging plan that the organization comes up with internally before they start building campaigns, products, promotional opportunities, and the like. Another opportunity to really kind of brand through social media is just getting a handle around on-brand graphics. So we've been working with Partners for Active Living, who do a lot of incredible work around healthy and active options in our community, but making sure that they all feel on brand for the organization, whether they're initiative specific or part of a larger mission footprint. And a lot of that is storytelling through numbers, storytelling through highly engaging visuals, making sure where applicable your logo or watermark are on the visuals you're sharing out through social media. And that might make more sense for corporations, but I also think it has a real place for small businesses too. And a lot of this community, and I'm sure other communities, resonate with storytelling about the community, right? So using those storytelling strokes that bring in those heartfelt images or just amplify the work that you are doing in service of the community is a really good engagement tool for your social media. I see a few in the chat. Oh.
I don't see any questions.
Oh,
I see.
Donna. Sorry.
Yeah.
So building a little more deeply into storytelling online, we just talked about amplifying. Amplifying the work that you might be doing on behalf of in the community, the products you're offering to them. You can build this out into a multi-post campaign, right? So insert product X here and start building a story around it a lot of times those positive reviews or just asking folks to share a photo of them using your product goes a long way, and sharing that back out on your social channels. I see a lot of businesses in Spartanburg doing a great job with this, and it really does help increase engagement, and it's free. So if you're not at the part of unlocking that pay to play model, which Facebook, Instagram, those platforms really do, they are businesses, right? So boosting posts, creating ads for social media, those absolutely help reach larger audiences, and they can be more targeted as well. And that is often what you will need to do to reach outside of about 8% of your following, as it were. So we strongly suggest allocating even a nominal social media budget to help build those engagements for your company.
And Catherine, can you explain what boosting a post is?
Sure. So after you've already created a post, on your view of your Facebook account, there's either on Instagram or Facebook, there's usually a prompt that says boost this post, or it might serve it up as like a sponsored ad for you, just so you can see what it looks like. You just click on that button and you can go in and set a budget for boosting, a timeline that you'd like it to be boosted. And then you can also start to play around with audience targeting. So there's radial, which gives you a circumference you can set around a particular location, or around kind of like the city or county. And then there's also more strategically targeted audiences based on the behaviors of the group that you're trying to reach. You can certainly set age group, et cetera, but you can get much more in depth with those with that targeting, and you don't need to just have certainly if you're promoting something, it's going to help, but you can target it to just visit your website, right? Or increase following on social media, which I think is just helpful for folks, again, even with a really small budget, to start experimenting with, because that's what a lot of this is, until you're able to pull enough information to understand what has the most reach, impact, and engagement. Any more questions about that? I know I don't have a slide showing boosted posts, but I can definitely follow up with almost a step-by-step if that's helpful.
I do not see any, but I'm sure that someone will have a question here shortly. So go ahead and continue.
I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit, and this is certainly depending on your bandwidth and the size of company you have, but we always try to do at least a month planning view with our clients, and that can be as simple as taking a spreadsheet and just building out a calendarized approach. It can be really overwhelming if you're trying to program social media day to day or even week to week. So it's just an exercise we suggest where you're pulling everything from holidays, to relevant promotional opportunities, community opportunities that you can build on from a messaging standpoint. And certainly, if you've got a product and promotional timeline as part of your company, it just allows you to take a bird's eye view, at least month to month, and a quarter is amazing to plan in advance, figure out where you might have holes that you just need to intentionally fill in some content, and where you can plan more strategically from a campaign standpoint. Again, most of our work with nonprofits take this approach in terms of awareness months or around particular initiative launches or campaigns, but the same model can work for our small businesses. Just really thinking in advance about scheduling social media posts, and you can certainly schedule those in advance too. We just usually start with a spreadsheet that helps us take that bigger picture view. We use a particular platform called Sprout Social, but there's a lot of ones out there that offer a free social media management system. If you have a smaller number of accounts you're managing, at the very least, if you've got at least 3 social media platforms, it allows you to post on all of the platforms at one time instead of creating individual posts for each. But the most significant thing it provides, depending on the level of the management platform you're buying into, again, free options are plenty. It allows for reporting that really helps you understand how your audience is interacting with your social media, demographic breakdown, engagement, et cetera. So if you have the capability to consider a social media management platform, we always suggest it. If for nothing else, and to help streamline your efforts. This particular one has a great visual calendar function. It allows you to share out posts if you need approval, through the ranks of a company or organization. But it's just another tool that you can use for planning and advance, and certainly being more intentional and strategic about your social media programming down the line. This is just an example of some of the cross-network reporting. So it can show you all 3 platforms we use for a particular client, what the metrics look like month to month. And it can really be helpful if you're reporting out to somebody else. And last but not least, it's just a reminder that your brand is a story unfolding across all customer touch points at any given time. It's not just a logo. It is how you communicate on behalf of your business, that interaction you have with your customers and your employees, quite frankly. It is really the sum total of all of these interactions that help create your brand. And that's part of why it's important to really think about your communication channels strategically. You don't want someone visiting your website that's outdated and doesn't have accurate information when you're offering an incredibly high octane product that's so useful, and it's just might be misrepresented along the way. Whether it's in this meta description from a Google search, or it's just an outdated page on your website. And I know it's a lot. It can feel like a lot to keep up with, but some of it is just almost coming up with your own system that says, I'm going to check in on my communications a few times a week to make sure there's alignment among all of them, and really kind of just setting that discipline in. So you can make sure your brand is kind of putting its best foot forward, for lack of a better description, which I just think is really important for a small business. Everybody's rooting, especially right now, for small businesses to succeed. It's just folks need to be able to find you and need to be able to support you. And a lot of that comes from the information that you're putting out into the world.
Okay. Catherine, we do have a question in the chat from Anita. Could you share most important things to think about when streamlining your brand across various social media channels?
Sure. I think depending on your bandwidth for creating that larger strategic communication plan, you can definitely you can think about messaging differently on each platform, but it's also okay to kind of like have the same posts across 2, 3, 4 of them. The biggest thing I think is your content engaging, right? So we know that videos do really well. You're seeing an extraordinary rise in it, certainly in the past year. And I don't mean videos like you need to spend $5,000 on a marketing reel to tell the story. I just mean videos that are you telling the story to your community of what you're offering. These kind of like user-generated content that doesn't have to look extremely polished absolutely gets you that engagement. There's some, I know Adobe Spark has a video platform that you can use for really basic editing, just adding your logo onto stuff or adding a little intro card or call to action to your website at the end that again is something that's very DIY but looks pretty presentable at the end of the day. Having those on brand graphics, so just being conscious about the images that you are using to represent your product or organization. And what are we on, like iPhone 20 right now? I mean, your camera works. It's incredible just in the 3 years since I started New South, what's available to an everyday person for their marketing. It's getting through the hurdle of experimenting with it and feeling comfortable with it, which certainly takes a second, but everybody on this call is capable of using some of those accessible apps to create content. I definitely think we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years a real increase in folks engaging with stories, right? And now we have Instagram Reels, so those platforms that just feel those platform amenities that feel authentic, that storytelling, kind of bite-sized storytelling opportunities are where folks are going to learn more. And having a plan for stories, if it makes sense for your organization or product, is always a great idea. Again, you can be very experimental there as well. And the biggest thing I think for that multi-platform engagement is also just to think about reciprocity within the community, partnerships where you can tap into. It just goes so much farther. And of course, we see it in the nonprofit community a lot, but we do see it in the small business community as well. And then we see crossover between those two of those. Like, everybody needs a lift right now, and nearly everybody's willing to have a go at it together. It's just coming up with a plan and having time. And that's the biggest thing. If you want that kind of partnership push, right? You want to go in on a cross promotional opportunity with someone, just make sure you've thought it out and you're giving time for somebody to respond to it, because everybody does have a million things going on. I think that it is extremely helpful to build those opportunities as long as you've got time to get your arms around it.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions for Catherine? I don't see any in the chat, but I do have one for you, Catherine. Last year was rough. It was rough for our small business community. Even the beginning of this year. And I think that you hit on it, but I just want to want you to reiterate how important it is to have some type of online presence, whether it's social media, whether it's an updated website where people can view your menu, and have easy access to the food that you serve, and maybe some pictures of the food that you serve, but just how important it is to have a great digital presence, especially in our community, especially during this time.
I think that's actually a really good note to hit on. We have seen an extraordinary influx in our food service community that had to turn online very quickly, and partners like Hub City Delivery, who already have a menu program laid out, were really able to jump in and help. But it was changing daily for folks, and everybody has to learn to be a little patient right now still. And our service industry folks were doing an incredible job, but just figuring out opportunities to have the visuals of the food served up is extremely helpful, and making sure that your Facebook has your newest information, and so does your website, because folks really are going online between search and social and your website to find that type of information. And it unfortunately, it does hurt some folks when it's not as readily accessible, because our attention span was already small. And then the last year happened. And even though we've seen this giant increase in the use of social, like using more hours during a day for the everyday person, and the amount of content and messaging being served on it, it doesn't make our ability to focus on it any greater. And so just being very concise about your messaging and about what you want folks to learn from you as you are promoting your product is really important.
Do we have any more questions? Feel free to unmute or put them in the chat. We do have Anita. She said that she would love to connect with some of the local business owners here today. That would be great, Anita. We'll send out some things for you so you can connect to the businesses that are on the call, as well as some of our financial institution representatives here today. Do we have any questions for Catherine in regards to online presence?
I received one about e-commerce for those that may not have had that presence in the past, that making that transition from brick and mortar to e-commerce, and what would be the best ways to start that out.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I can say along with New South, there's several shops in Spartanburg that specialize it, certainly just based off of budgetary opportunities. So we build that e-commerce opportunity. Arrowhead does, A-Line does. I mean, there's several shops that do, and there's certainly kind of the DIY opportunity. I strongly suggest that you use a professional to build your shopping experience, because it can be quite arduous, especially the first go around. And then you do want to have a professional within an arm's length for the maintenance of it, or as questions come up. So it depends on the level of functionality you might need, and certainly kind of like the quantity, of product you're selling, because it's a range of options when it comes to e-commerce. But it is absolutely a tool that we're seeing an extreme increase in right now, and for the past year. And it's something that I personally think is worth the investment of support, just again, based off of what your functionality needs might be as well. And I'm happy to put kind of a tips and tricks sheet together and share that with Jolitha. So there's just links to who I know can support that type of application, but also if you really are looking to try to do it yourself, just guidance on it. I mean, there's so many marketing blogs out there. Everybody's got a little something different to say, but just from our experience, what's been most helpful.
Good stuff. I don't see any more questions, but again, like Catherine said, she can put together a one-pager of some things that would help you as far as social media presence, online presence, and your brand. And we'll send it out to you at the end of the session. I want to say thank you so much, Catherine, for all of your wisdom and your expertise that you've shared with us today. Goodness gracious, we have seen some things last year in the beginning of this year, and we understand the importance of online presence and the importance of pivoting. So thank you for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.